Have you ever felt the subway watching you? In the empty stations, in the silent cars, something hides in the tunnels. Welcome to Horror Sector. Tonight, 3 true stories of encounters in the depths of Mexico City that defy all logic. If you ride the metro, you might just prefer to walk after this. My name is Julian. I know this story I'm about to tell isn't exactly long and doesn't have a proper ending, but it was very frightening and unsettling for me. Even now, a few years later, it still gives me nightmares. It happened around 2022 at the Pantheon station. It was 11 p.m., and I was coming back from a get-together at a friend's house. I had no chance to stay. I was out of money for an Uber or any other ride-sharing service. It wasn't far to get home anyway, so I went down to the platform and waited for the subway. I looked around, restless and bored. The station was empty, too empty. It reminded me of those internet horror stories, the back rooms and all that. These liminal spaces that should be full of people and suddenly are completely deserted. They're terrifying. Anyway, there I was, standing in the middle of a platform in complete silence, waiting when a gust of air from the tunnel ruffled my hair. I thought it might be the approaching train pushing the air out of the tunnel, but I waited, and the train didn't arrive. I stared straight ahead, and a certain discomfort in my arms and legs began to bother me. It was as if I had a weight hanging on me. I attributed it to fatigue from the gym and sighed impatiently because I really wanted to get home. In that place, the emptiness made me nervous. I turned to the side and pretended to walk to pass the time, but the moment I took the first step, I felt something grab my ankle and pull me down. I fell face first to the ground. I looked behind me, alarmed, and there, hidden in the tracks, I saw a woman in white with black eyes and very long hair looking back at me. Told this way, it might seem like we stared at each other for minutes, but it was only an instant, a flash before she hid in the wall. The adrenaline and the shock led me to do something reckless. The moment she disappeared, I turned on the floor to look over the tracks and see her again. I did it. I peered over the edge, and there was nothing on the tracks. An instant later, lights blinded me. I panicked and backed away, deafened by a horn because the train was coming out of the tunnel. If I hadn't turned my head away in time, one more second and my head would have been gone. The subway operator noticed this, and some employees came down to ask me what I was doing. I tried to explain and described what I saw. I suppose the employees at Pantheon Station must see a lot of things during their shifts because, surprisingly, they believed me. Elsewhere, I would have been considered crazy, but they nodded slowly and said that I should be more careful and not stand so close to the tracks again. To this day, I don't know what it could have been. A ghost? A demon? I don't know. I'm not very knowledgeable about these things. As for its intentions, I'd like to think it just wanted to scare me and that my recklessness in looking for it is what put my life at risk. However, now I'm more careful on the subway. I always stand far from the platform, and when it's late at night I take an Uber, I stay home. Whatever, but I try not to take the subway after 10 p.m. My name is Amanda, and I'm from Mexico City. The story I'm going to tell has been difficult for me to process, as it made me question my mental health. It happened about 7 years ago, when I was in my penultimate semester of university. It was an event that radically changed my life. I studied architecture at UNAM, and back then, in 2018, I was in my final year. I was emotionally and physically exhausted. The anticipation of all the exams, tests, and projects had me on edge. Plus, I'd broken up with my boyfriend after a 2-year relationship. I didn't have much money since my father, who had always supported me, was having a rough time with sales. This also made me feel bad about not being able to contribute, and as if that wasn't enough, the car I'd been driving, a blue Nissan Suru that belonged to my father, broke down catastrophically. Anyway, it was an exhausting time, and I had to go back to using the subway to get from the university to my house. I traveled almost the entire length of the line 3 every day, from Indios Verdes to the university and back again at night. It was a grueling routine, but my father told me to focus on graduating and that he would take care of the rest. He motivated me to keep going. Thanks to him, I know I didn't try to do what they say I tried, and I know that what happened was real. It was a night in late October, around 10 p.m. I was standing at the Universidad metro station. The station was almost completely empty, except for two girls at the other end of the platform and a boy pacing back and forth with his phone. They were all quite far from me. I had my headphones on, listening to music, but that didn't stop me from hearing someone hissing nearby. I assumed it wasn't for me, but the persistence made me realize it was directed at me. I looked around, but I didn't see a soul. I was alone, but I could still hear the hissing. I took off my headphones and carefully looked around, but found nothing. It started to make me nervous. I felt an immediate urge to leave, but another feeling, devoid of any logic, convinced me to stay. In other circumstances, I would have left, but this time I stayed. I put on my headphones and kept looking straight ahead. A minute later, the hissing started again, and this time I knew it was coming from the tunnel. I looked to the right, and at the mouth of the tunnel, I saw someone very pale, a small boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old. He had a bowl haircut, preschool clothes, and a playful smile. It seemed strange to see a child alone at that hour. I was still alone on that part of the platform. I looked at him again. He was about 15 meters away from me and he said something, but I didn't understand because of the music. I took off my headphones and he spoke to me again, saying these exact words. "My mom is in the tunnel, and she wants you to come." At that moment, all the hairs on my body stood on end, and I felt myself getting cold as ice. I asked him to repeat what he said, my voice a mere whisper. He repeated it in a firm, authoritarian tone unnatural for a child. "My mom is in the tunnel and she wants you to come. Come with me. I'm scared to go alone. Come on, come." He held out his hand to me, and I noticed it was very dirty with oil or very black grime. I wanted to back away. I tried with all my might to run because something inside me knew this wasn't normal. But again, a feeling of calm prevented me. Instead, I engaged him in conversation, trying to convince him to move away from the tunnel. However, that boy seemed much calmer than I was, and he had a mocking smile. He answered me the same thing again. All the while, I wondered how the subway employees hadn't noticed a child standing alone so close to the tunnel. That child, impatient with my refusals, turned his back on me and jumped from the platform onto the tracks. I let out a scream of terror. I yelled at him to come back. I looked around for help, but when I saw I was alone, I did something I never would have done. I jumped onto the tracks to follow him. I didn't want to follow that boy. In another situation, I would have run for help, but I was in a kind of trance. It only took me a second, as I walked along the tracks, to realize I wasn't in control of my body as I ventured deeper into the dark mouth of the tunnel. I could see, hear, and above all, smell whatever was hidden there. The service lights barely allowed me to see. I moved forward carefully, listening for distant echoes, as if there were a group of workers using heavy machinery. Everything creaked and shook around me, and my heart raced when I heard a distant honking horn and some faraway lights that blinded me. That was the train. I yelled at the boy to come back, and when I opened my mouth to speak, I felt a horrible, bitter, and sour taste. Only then did I realize the horrible, penetrating smell of decay that permeated the place. About 15 meters away in the darkness was the boy laughing, hugging the leg of a tall, hunched woman. I don't really have another way to describe her. She was thin, with yellowish, oily skin. She wore a long, tattered black tunic, and her tangled white hair reached her knees. I still can't forget her wrinkled face, her crooked mouth, and her black eyes, shiny like 2 pieces of pottery. She emanated a suffocating odor, and seeing her made my legs tremble so much that I collapsed to the floor as she said, "Thank you for coming, Amanda." I tried to get up, but I couldn't. I couldn't even breathe. I had a panic attack right there, and I guess I passed out. When I woke up, I was in the Unum University Hospital, and my parents were with me. They were both crying and started asking me what I thought I was doing, since they'd been told that I'd apparently tried to hurt myself. I tried to explain that it wasn't like that and immediately told them everything. I told them about the boy, the woman in the tunnel, but they didn't believe me, not right away. Over the next few hours, I discovered what had happened in the eyes of others. The security cameras show me starting to talk to myself on the platform and suddenly rushing onto the tracks and walking into the darkness. The ones who noticed this were the girls at the other end of the platform. As soon as they saw me jump onto the tracks, they ran to the subway operator's booth. They stopped the oncoming train and came to my aid. They found me unconscious, lying in the middle of the tracks. No one else appeared on the security cameras but me. They didn't see anyone else inside the tunnel. I started to worry. I thought I was going crazy. I didn't know if what I saw was real or not, but I was sure of one thing. I didn't want to hurt myself, and I kept repeating that to my parents and all the psychologists and psychiatrists who came to my room. They all asked me about my medical history, my feelings, my emotions. Some asked me why I wanted to end it all. I admitted that I felt overwhelmed, but I insisted that I didn't want to take my own life. I never admitted that I did it because I saw a ghost child. I was terrified of being diagnosed with schizophrenia. In the end, after many tests, they concluded that I had an episode of transient global amnesia. All the psychological tests confirmed what I already knew. I didn't want to hurt myself. My parents weren't so convinced, but over time I managed to make them believe me. I've never had depression, and I've never tried to harm myself. However, sometimes when I'm alone and in silence, I've doubted my sanity. I carried those doubts for many years, but today I'm certain I'm not crazy and that something at Metro Universidad almost took my life. I don't know who those girls were on the other side of the platform, but they saved me. They prevented that woman and her son from finishing me off. As for what those things could have been, I haven't the slightest idea. It's a mystery to me. A mystery I don't intend to solve, since I never set foot in that station again. My name is Octavio, and I live in Mexico City. The story I want to tell happened to me several years ago, in 2002, when I had just graduated from the university. I had found a job near the Portales station, and I had to take the second metro line to get home. It was a long and tiring trip at night. One night, in early May, I left an extremely long meeting at the office. The boss was talking about new projects, metrics, performance targets, and who knows what other nonsense, with an air of self-importance. It was awful because we watched the hours tick by until he realized it was already 10 p.m. As soon as we left, he got in his car and drove off. After complaining, we started to leave. I was the only one using the subway. I arrived at the station and went down to the platform, standing at the far end hoping for a less crowded car. I was practically alone, and I desperately wanted to sleep. After a few minutes, the train arrived and something strange happened. Almost everyone got off the train car I was supposed to board. The other cars had a steady flow of people, but there were barely 2 people left in this one. I boarded confidently and immediately sat down in a corner seat, facing the rest of the car. The other 2 people were asleep. The first thing I noticed, as soon as I sat down, was that the seat was freezing cold, too cold. It was like sitting on a block of ice, and the air in the carriage was icy. I assumed it was because it was empty and the air conditioning had been cooling the place down, although it didn't make sense that a carriage that had just been emptied would be so frigid. However, I tried not to dwell on it. 2 seats ahead was a man who had clearly also just finished work, and a little further away, another younger guy who I assumed was a student. I was lost in thought when I heard a faint whistling sound that caught my attention. I looked ahead, trying to see if it was one of the men or perhaps car horns, but I couldn't find the source of that soft, slow whistling. It was very high-pitched and shrill. I sat up a little to see if anyone was hiding behind a seat, but I didn't see anyone else. There was no one else in that carriage except the 3 of us. Suddenly, I saw the student react. He had woken up and was staring intently toward the back of the carriage. I tried to see what he was seeing, but there was nothing there. However, he jumped up from his seat and ran toward the man sleeping in his seat. He woke him up and I heard him say, Sir, get up." The man woke up, he whispered something in his ear, and he too got up from his seat and they went to the door. They signaled for me to get off at Nativita station, but I was suspicious of them. I didn't know if this was a robbery tactic, so I stayed in my seat and watched as the doors closed behind them. I regret not following them. Because as soon as I was alone in the train car, the whistling started again, sharper and more annoying than before. I looked around but couldn't find anything until I saw my reflection in the glass. Suddenly, for a split second, I saw someone walking down the aisle toward the back of the car. I jumped up from my seat trembling, and the movement of the train almost made me fall before the lights went out for a moment. When they came back on, I saw her. Sitting at the back of the train car, a figure dressed in gray rags with pale skin whistled loudly, her gaze fixed on the floor. I had never had a panic attack until that moment. My chest ached as if each heartbeat would break my ribs. I could barely breathe, and my vision blurred. I understood why people had rushed off, and now it was my turn. I was the only one trapped there with that figure. The light flickered again, and I saw it standing. In an instant, it had stood up and was staring at me, still whistling. The scream of terror I let out should have echoed through all the cars, but no one heard me. I collapsed to the floor from the shock. From there, that being approaching me with slow, determined steps seemed gigantic, almost touching the ceiling of the car. It even looked as if it had to hunch over to walk. I don't remember what I was doing. I suppose I dragged myself away from her, heading for the nearest door, hoping to get off as soon as we reached Villa de Cortez. But when the train stopped, the doors didn't open. The light went out, and I saw her coming closer. I closed my eyes and covered my ears in a desperate attempt to block out what was happening. I listened to her for a couple more minutes, as if she were right next to me. And then, silence. Absolute silence. I opened my eyes a little, and the light had come back to the carriage. I took a deep breath, looked around fearfully, and no longer felt the same cold as before. It was all over, but I was still trembling. I ran to another carriage as soon as we arrived at the next station. I got home that night, and my grandmother was waiting for me with dinner, worried about my lateness. I explained why I had arrived so late, and after complaining about my boss, she realized that something else was wrong with me. She listened attentively, and after a while she slowly nodded and assured me that what I had seen was a sub-astral entity. I was dumbfounded. She explained it to me in great detail the next morning. You see, my grandmother is devoutly Catholic, but she combines her devotion with some esoteric beliefs. The entities of the lower astral plane, as she called them, are malevolent spirits whose vibrations revolve around hatred, resentment, and anger. Her explanation was that the people in that train car and I had the misfortune of encountering a lower astral entity filled with hatred and anger that wanders the earth. Coincidence or not, it ended up in that car, and I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. The fact is that on Monday I had to go to work and back by subway. I avoided the empty cars for a good while. It took some time, but in the end, nothing like that happened to me again. Later, I found a new job and was able to stop using public transportation by buying my first car. Today, I am a happy man. I am married and my grandmother lives with me. She is 85 years old and the sweetest woman I know. She is my friend and, along with my wife, one of the most important pillars in my life. I am undoubtedly very grateful to her. I learned many things from her, and that Saturday morning she taught me that evil exists in many forms, even in the form of specters and entities we must beware of. These were just 3 voices among many. The subway holds more secrets. Do you have a story you're afraid to tell in the light of day? Share it with us. Subscribe to Horror Sector, hit the notification bell, and don't miss the next journey into terror. Because in the tunnel's darkness, something is always waiting.